Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Nightcap Candid Cafe Conversations. Today, I have a very wonderful person, a lovely bead from all the way up north, kind of. I've got CedarForge. Ta-da! Look at this lovely bean. Look at this beautiful bean. CedarForge, if you are unaware, is a wood crafter, a crafter of his own body, lifting heavy things. A builder upper of other people, and a wonderful human being. And I'm very excited that we get to talk and chat and chill and hang out a little bit for a brief period of time at least.
You put the intro so much better than I ever do when I'm guesting on other people's streams. Whenever people ask me like, and where can we find you? I'm like, I don't know, on Twitter. There's a link tree. You'll find my stuff there.
Well, it's different when you're introing other people and when you have to like sell yourself. Because I could tell a bunch of people a bunch of things about a bunch of other people, but as soon as someone's like, but then what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm allowed on the internet sometimes. And I guess maybe I draw stuff every once in a while, so do that. But unlike drawing, you make a lot of things that are like tactile, that are like wooden bowls and dice trays and things of that nature, that you can buy. You can buy it. But when talk to me about the wood making. What made you get into that sort of hobby turned perhaps hobby turned financial gain, hobby turned job?
Yeah. It sort of started back when I was, I'd say 12 or 13. One of my first jobs was working on dairy farms, because we lived in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin, and hey, guess what, there's an abundance of jobs in is dairy farm work. But we would like help repair like milk houses and like fencing and stuff like that. So that's sort of like what initially got me into like kind of enjoying woodworking, even though the work itself wasn't very exciting. But I kind of went from there after dropping out of college like 3 times. I started to do sort of more like tradesman work, construction stuff like that, and I really enjoyed doing like framing and things along those lines. My actual last job before I quit to try to do this woodworking thing full time was working framing for a decking company. But it's just always been a material that I've enjoyed working with because you can do so much with it. And you see some of these like YouTube channels where these old masters will like, take these chisels and like actually like, carve a thing out of it by just to draw a stencil on it and then just like see the depth they need to go to and like sculpt like, a face or something. And it's just always been so, I don't know, beautiful, and something that I've been obsessed with, like watching Bob Vila's Home Again or This Old House on PBS back in the day. And I don't know, I said I want to take a whack at it, and here I am taking a whack at it like a year and a half later.
Hey. So you make kind of a wide assortment of stuff, if I'm not mistaken. I know most of what you make from like your dice trays and dice towers and things of that nature, but what are some other things that you've had the opportunity to kind of dabble in and create? And then what's been one of your like favorite things and or most challenging thing to make? Those are 3 questions in one.
Well, one of the cool things that I've gotten to do is I have some friends who live up on the East Coast, and they have, this is just going to be a really weird anecdote, but they have a couple of Scottish Terriers, and they have a beautiful, very chubby cat. And one of the Scottish Terrier puppies terrifies the cat. So they've been commissioned to build a like child's gate that is like a fully like closed off one. But we'll have like a cat door in it so they can like, depending on the time of day, cat can go through or they can go through and the pets can coexist without the cat getting a heart attack or something.
Oh
It's one of like the weirder ones that I've done, but one that I was like, yes, I can build you a gate. I would say one of the more challenging ones was one of my own. I don't want to say devising, but it was early summer during the initial lockdown during the Pandago. And I was initially just going to do like a bulk tank pool like everyone was doing that summer, but obviously bulk tanks were sold out everywhere, slash, you know, in short supply. So I framed and built a pool in my backyard.
Amazing.
Which I think was one of the worst decisions I've ever made.
Incredible.
Because it took me 2.5 months to like finally get the thing built where it was like not leaking. And there is a reason that we don't use wood for pools.
Yeah. gets a little algae prone, doesn't it?
It's it's not good for the wood. The wood is not watertight. Like I do want to have access to, like 1700s tar or whatever it was.
Right. Yeah, like the pitch and whatever. Yeah.
So I was just in the backyard for like, I think it was 4 weeks, just going through board by board, sealing it, then like coating it, going through, trying to get it to seal up. Then we put a liner in there, which it's shaped like a very hard L shape. And they don't sell liners that are that shape. So we have a circular liner in there. So there's just slack just on the floor of this pool. It's a mess. It was a mistake. I'm turning it into a sauna.
Hey, there you go. There you go. Burn away all of the algae and everything, right?
Exactly. So mistakes were made. Now we know.
Now you know. See, now you can just like take that knowledge. If you shrink it down, you just make little like, I can imagine making like a little tiny bathtub for like a Geralt of Rivia sort of like fan creation of, I just want a tub. I have a Geralt. I just need a tub.
Yeah, so just like for your desk, you can have them just.
Yeah, just like hanging out, just chilling. I know that you have some delightful furry companions. Please tell me all about your furry companions. Who are they? What are their names? I need to know all of them.
Yeah, they're
pretty please.
They're all very good. Bender, who is my Pibby mix.
Baby.
He was a puppo that I found in a cardboard box in the middle of winter. I was up visiting some friends in the cities, and we were like walking through one of those like residential alley things. There was just a box there with like 2 Pibby puppies in it. So we took them both, obviously. His sister currently lives actually in Arizona, where we can never go back to.
can't go back there.
I'll never see his sister again. But yeah, he was like a little weasel in there. They both were, because they were so small and hungies, and I like obviously could not leave them there, regardless of whether or not I was going to adopt them. But I've had Bender for, I want to say, like 7 years now. He's 7.
84 years.
He's getting up there.
Buddy. Oh, baby.
Then there's Cake, who is our cat. She was a like a barn cat, like litter at my parents' house. And we took her because she was at the initial point where the kittens were starting to like, show their personalities and stuff. She was like the super lovey one. She now spends most of her time out of arm's length and like making a like one eye open, one eye closed, just staring at you as you walk past, sort of in a like, do not touch me. And she's great. And so so angry at everyone. If we do have like a couple of friends who come over to play D&D and stuff here, and we've got one friend who I don't know what it is about him, but she just hates him.
Aw.
And like walk through the house behind him, like squawking at him until he leaves her space. I don't know why.
Hey, get out of my house. Hey.
It's literally just like chasing, like if she could have like a little squirt bottle, she would. I don't know why she feels that way about him, but it's really funny to watch.
Oh.
And our last one, the loud one that you have been hearing barking in the background, is Bowie, who was a surprise, which is interesting to say about a dog. But we had initially adopted his mom from some friend of ours because she had like some really severe anxiety. And they have a bunch of hounds, and they told us when we took her in that she was like having this pseudo pregnancy, which I didn't know was a thing. But she was like, you know, kind of showing a little bit like that she was going to have puppies. We were just like, oh, that's weird, but yeah, no, we'll take her in. Like Bennett could use a friend. And I was working at that time as a manager of a trampoline park, which usually meant I got home around 1 a.m. or so on weekends. And I came home and like couldn't find Chloe, and I was looking around everywhere for her, and I looked in the closet. And you know when your brain's so tired that like there's a thing that makes sense and a thing that doesn't make sense? I looked down at Chloe and I saw her with like 6 little bundles of joy, and I looked down and was like, where did Chloe get guinea pigs? And like 10 seconds later, oh went into the other room, and like 1 a.m. woke up my partner. Hey, you need to come to the closet with me.
We got puppies.
We have puppies now. We have, you know how there's a 2-dog limit in our apartment? Well, we are in breach of that contract.
Oopsie doopsies. Jeez, go from 2 dogs to 8.
Yeah, it was so much. We did find homes for all of them eventually, and Chloe did end up wanting to go back home. It turned out the reason that she was having all that anxiety was because she needed to nest away so she could have her puppies someplace safe. So it was wild because we're also in the process of buying this house. So fortunately, the whole too many puppies things did line up. But that was a chaotic time for everyone.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine. We have 3 cats, and we got our first cat when we moved into one of our first apartments, my partner James and I, and we kind of unintentionally made it a trend that whenever we moved we would get another cat, because we moved to a different apartment complex, or a different apartment in the same complex, and we're like, why don't we just get a second cat? Why not? So we did, and then we moved into this house and we're like, well, now we've established a trend, so now we have to. So that's how we ended up with 3 cats in one apartment. And at one point, when we had our first cat and then our second cat, we also had a dog who has since passed on, but like she was old. she was an older dog who did also have anxiety and was not, I don't like, she kind of grew up, well, she was around cats a lot, but like she always wanted to chase them. She was an Australian Shepherd and was not meant for apartment life, which was unfortunate because that's literally all like that. We just had an apartment, but like, I love animals so incredibly much. I think that like specifically cats for me, and I know other animals for other people I don't think I can go through life without them, because they've always been in my life. Like since I was teeny tiny, there's always been at least one cat in our house. um and they're just so, I think cats specifically get a bad rap
They
um
do.
for being like super distant and like being assholes and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And yes, but also people are that way. So like,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
they're not going to be assholes the entire time. They're not going to be terrible the entire time.
Yeah.
You just have to learn that cats are not people. Cats are going to, and also they're different from each other, so they're going to react differently to, to different things. They also can carry trauma. They also can carry, past experiences and
Hmm.
preferences and personalities and all that sort of stuff. So give a cat a chance. And also
Yeah.
dogs.
Yeah. And adopt, don't shop.
Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Because there's there's
Um,
there's plenty of them. There's
oh my gosh.
plenty of them.
I follow way too many like pet shelters on like Instagram
That's dangerous.
because like every day there's another pit bull that I'm like, we do with their dog.
You know, with their dog. That's the benefit of having a house that you own.
Exactly.
Is
Our
that
neighbors all already hate us because we're so loud.
you recently started streaming
Mhm.
um various things. A lot of it's been like really either video game focused. Have you done any sort of like crafty streams? I haven't seen if you had or not.
I really
Woodworking
want
streams?
to at
Yeah.
some point. I would love to like set up just like a camera in the shop and do stuff. But I think the way I do things, like the way my layout is in there, I think it'd be very difficult to like do it in a perspective that would like actually let you see what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it I'm like hunched over or I'm like turning around to like get a right angle on the thing I'm sawing and stuff. So it'd
Yeah.
probably just be,
A
two
lot of your
hours of
like
me just chuffing around in the shop and just with my back to the camera sawing something.
just the whole time.
Yeah, I'd
The
like,
whole
we'll put up like a caption that says, like no chat open, emote only,
right.
shop ambience or something. Me swearing in the background if I mess something up.
Or you could have like on the screen or like in chat. If you like this, follow this link, but without pants on.
There you go.
So Cedar is a proud sex worker on OnlyFans. Does a fantastic job. I'm assured. I have not dipped toes into it yet. However, I have seen some teases on Twitter, and it is very tasteful and very nice. But I wanted to know because the I only know a handful of people who use, or rather who use OnlyFans as like an actual source of work.
Mhm.
Um, what what kind of started you on that line of work, and also how is it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? That kind of like, what do you like about your job? How is it? That thing that you do all the time and don't really think about too much.
Yeah, if you love the thing you do, you don't work a day in your life.
That's a lie.
That's true. It actually kind of got started because I was looking for a resource to sort of try to start combating some like body dysmorphic issues that I
Mhm.
experience. And it's a risky approach to doing it, I would say.
Mhm.
So, I don't fully endorse attempting it, but it just was something I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to see if I like it. If I don't, I can get rid of it. If I like it, then it could be a good potential source of income. So it was something that I wanted to just sort of like do for myself, and it sort of like has taken off a little bit since then, and it's been like a nice reliable bit of cash flow every
Right.
month. And I actually do have quite a like bit of fun doing it now, mainly because it's just so weird to like get reactions from people who are like initially here because they're like from like the D&D or like streamer space, and then one random day you're talking to Nix on Nix's stream, and the next thing you know, a smut war has broken out all over Twitter.
What? I wouldn't know anything about that. No.
That was the wildest day. Like, it just, Twitter was a sexy train wreck that day.
It was on absolute fire the entire afternoon, and I cannot recover.
Yeah. I would say something that like about it that I do enjoy though is it's sort of turned almost into like a creative outlet now that's like low pressure, in that like there's a paywall. So like if I put something on there, like if I were to throw it up on like an alt Twitter account, trolls will do their troll thing. If you have a $10 a month paywall, typically trolls won't bother. So it's just sort of like a freedom of expression of body, because I'm not someone who I would ever consider like graceful. But when you are able to sort of, look at yourself from other angles that you don't normally see them from, like if you just, turn video on your camera and just, play with some lighting and like see what happens, like you do get to like see yourself from a direction that you never would otherwise. And you do find like glimpses of like beauty in that for yourself, which is difficult for a lot of people, myself included. Liking ourselves is hard in this era of internet. So it's just sort of like a nice little safe corner for me to express myself, learn to love my physical form, and get some money sometimes.
Sometimes we get to the check.
Yeah.
Just a good time sometimes. Yeah, I can definitely relate on like the body dysmorphia kind of feeling, because that's sort of something that I've been struggling with since middle school, I think. So like that prime, 10 to 12-year-old, turn of the tide where you should be thinking about other things, and yet that's all that you think about. It's there. I haven't gotten to the point yet where like I can consistently, or on a semi-consistent basis, see me and be like the all of me and be like, this is okay. There's like parts of me that I'm very happy about, like concepts of me, I should say,
sure.
that I'm very, that I really like. I enjoy my hands. I think that I have great shoulders. My general physique, like the general ebb and flow of the way that my body is shaped, it's pretty all right. It's like the stuff that's on the outside of that. So everything else that I'm just like, but what if we didn't?
Yeah, there's
that though.
Always that like that one thing that you fixate on, that like you like people will tell you like it's not as like, I don't know, glaring as you find it, or like it's not as
like the potential throwaway comment of like, oh, but I'd never even noticed that. Like, well, it's but that's all I see. But listen,
I only noticed that.
That's only where my eyes go.
Yeah. And it is so hard to get over that hump. And like people who like you love and that you trust are telling you like this is not a flaw on you. Like this is just something about your body. It is you. It is beautiful. Like it is not this detriment that you think it is. And like you love and trust and respect the person telling you this, but in that moment you're just like, You're a goddamn liar.
So.
Full of shit.
Yep.
I'm a hideous monster.
Yes. And that's something that's hard to, it's hard for the brain to process, both like logically and emotionally, I think, is especially if you are in a loving and healthy relationship with someone. Whether it's a very close friend or a romantic relationship or, familial relationship or something like that. Someone that you trust implicitly, and yet you still have these extreme doubts and bits of self-loathing for yourself when someone tells you something other than that. There is this war, at least for me, that happens, that is, I know that you are speaking the truth from your perspective. However, this is what I see, feel, and experience, and how come these two don't line up? And like trying to balance the idea of like, one of them has to give at some point, right? Yeah. But until then, it's that like mental anguish of it's gonna sound weird, wanting to feel bad about yourself while also wanting to make sure someone else doesn't feel bad that you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And like it also plays into that whole like cliche of, well, you have to say that, you're dating me, you're married to me, like right. we're in this, relationship, you have to say these things about me, which you objectively know is not true. They do not have to do anything, but like it is sometimes more difficult to believe it with like your partner that you live with, or like a very, very close friend. It's like, you just care about me, and like you are trying to alleviate my pain in this moment. And I appreciate that, but it's, it's okay that you're wrong.
It's okay that you're wrong. Why are we like this?
Come on, brain, be cool.
It's, brains are just, they hold on to the weirdest things, like the things that you think shouldn't matter. And like I myself am not professionally diagnosed with any sort of neurodivergencies or anything like that. I do have tendencies towards ADHD like things. So until it is not diagnosed, however,
it's so hard to get an ADHD diagnosis
when you're not a child, or also when you're a fab. It's very hard to get a diagnosis. So we're on that journey. However, I believe you have said that you have been diagnosed with ADHD. Is that correct?
Yeah, ADHD, PTSD, some light depression.
Just sprinkled in there.
Yeah, some light depression and some just general anxiety disorder.
That's a whole smorgasbord of all sorts of tasty things.
It was a good time. I've got some medication for it now, so that's been nice.
Is it a better time now, though, is the real question.
It
better
is,
with quotation marks.
Yeah, every time I meet with my primary care person, they're like, all right, we'll just double the dosage on this. So I'm like, okay.
Oh dear.
Just keep hitting me with it till my brain's good, doc.
Gotta get those brain bees to just kind of take a nap. Just take a little bit of a nap.
It really is like, I'm also doing some therapy with it as well, which has also been great, but that is a very difficult wall to get through. Especially like, I think I'm more prone to share personal things when I'm like physically in the space with someone.
Yeah.
And just sort of like due to the nature of how our like what's it called? Whoever takes our insurance works. The only real option is via like web conferencing, which like obviously I get. It's just very difficult to like talk to a like complete stranger about like, why am I sad all the time?
Yeah.
And like it's a weird bump to get over, which like took a while, but has been significantly better now. I'm on pretty good terms with my regular guy, and it's helpful. I know it's definitely not for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, the mental health system is a difficult one to navigate.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is made intentionally so. Like I got ADHD diagnosis fairly quickly for someone,
Mm-hmm.
which I assume means that it is really bad.
Mm.
Because like my parents were like very kind of pivoting into something that we may go into. Um, you should do some church about it versus like seeking medical attention of some kind. Yeah.
Ooh, the
Yeah.
visceral reaction I just had in my stomach. Ooh.
Talk to the priest in confession.
Oh
No, apart from the usual stuff.
no. Oh no.
So like getting to that point, like I was 31 when I had my first like 32 now. Last year when I had my first like conversation with a medical professional about mental health,
Mm-hmm.
which was like, even then I felt like bad that I was doing it this way, which like
Mm-hmm.
I fully endorse for everyone to do. But now that it's me doing it, I'm like, oh no, I shouldn't be doing this.
Oh
I should
no.
be going to church about it. Yeah.
That's something that I think a lot of people. So to put into context, Cedar and I have similar experiences when it comes to specifically religious trauma. Uh, and I'm not afraid to use the term here because it is something that has affected both of us uh, past, the time that we've been in there, and mostly in a negative way.
Mhm.
Um, I I can only speak for myself. I came from a pretty conservative Baptist upbringing. Um, and I want to preface all of this by saying that my parents are fantastic. My parents brought us up in a very, very good way and did instill in us a fervor to think for ourselves. So this is not a commentary on my parents or how they raised me. It is a comment on the environment as a whole, specifically in like big C church
Mhm.
things.
Yep.
So with that out of the way, um there was a lot of there's a lot of things that I took with me into adulthood that I didn't realize were affecting me, as far as like instincts or like reactions to things that are said, or environments that I found myself in. And like in particular, dealing with um figuring out, am I non-binary or not, because that's a very recent thing. I've had kind of odd feelings about gender and like all that stuff for a while, but like never had a space to think and consider if that was even something that was me, you
Yeah.
know. And I feel like you have a similar sort of thing
Yeah.
with that.
Um, so despite like one of I was raised Catholic, very Catholic. Despite Catholicism's like sort of rallying call, I would say that like they're the the original church. Like this is the church that Jesus Christ founded and gave to Saint Peter. Like, we are the original. Everyone else is like splitting off of us.
Have they heard of the Jews? Have they heard of like?
Yeah, there's that statement alone is problematic. And then you get into all the different like fragments of Catholicism that exist, because you've got Roman Catholic, you've got Eastern Orthodox. They're like sort of the two main categories of Catholicism, one of who like follows the Pope, one who does not. And then it sort of just spiders down from there to, there are branches in Roman Catholicism, one that I was raised in, that still practice Mass in Latin. And when you sort of look back historically at like why Mass was done in Latin, it was so that the peasants, and like all the Bibles had to be in Latin. Peasants couldn't read it and, you know, form their own opinions. It was just, I'm the priest, this is what I am saying, that this book says that you have to follow. It's, you know, it, as far as controlling a population goes, like a great way to do it. But yeah, so I was raised in this sort of subculture of Catholicism, which like we were told was like, you know, this is the pure form of Catholicism. This is how Christ intended us to worship. And not too long ago, I was actually like Googling the sort of subheading of Catholicism that I was attending, like from, I would say, 10 years old up until I was 18. And I typed it in, and the first like suggested result was, is a cult. I was like, uh-oh.
I remember I remember when that, to piggyback off that just for a little bit, I remember when that concept was brought up to me, like at the end of college into like going out of college, of like, is organized religion just another word for like a cult? And it's very interesting to think about, because like there's not really like a whole lot of difference except for terminology.
That's
very interesting to think about. Yeah,
it's just branding when you think about it. Like that is all it is. Like, I have a lot of my siblings are still like very closely attached to you know, Catholicism. And just on like an Instagram story, I shared something about like that the Church of Satan posted, and it was just like a like black and white like fact. And one of my siblings, Jim, is like, really? So you're pro the Church of Satan now? And I was like, well, one, yes, but two, like a fact is a fact. It doesn't matter who you get it from. Like, if it is a like an actual literal fact, like if they say it, it doesn't get negated because you don't like the source. And I'm sorry that you feel that way, but if you look at the world through that lens, you're going to have a bad time out here.
I have some bad news for you.
There's many things you're not going to accept because you don't like where the source is. But yes, also kind of like circling back to what you were saying, just like with gender identity and like sexuality was also something that, like, especially at that time, that like I was getting out of high school, like really being hammered home was like cracking down on homosexuality and things like that, mainly due to the inner workings of the church sort of being in hot water constantly.
I wonder why that could be.
Yeah,
perhaps
so
repression.
It's
and
a
like,
yeah, it's a you, not us thing. Like growing up in that whole environment where you're, you know, 14, 15, you've got a lot of chemicals buzzing around inside of you, and every week, at least once, usually twice, you're going to a giant scary house where God lives, and some dude up on the altar saying, by the way, if you are this way, you're going to hell. You're going to suffer for all eternity because you were made this way by the guy who's in charge of everything. Also, you have free choice, but he knows everything. So predetermination isn't really a thing. But also, if you choose to live this way, that's right, I said choose, then you are going to hell for all eternity. And you're just sitting there, just, so this sucks. Guess we'll just bury this.
Cut to 30-something-year-old me dealing with it in therapy later. It's fine.
Exactly. It's, it's therapy, that thing you're not allowed to go to.
Yeah.
Just talk to the priest about this problem.
That's another thing that is the and this is obviously not going to be a blanket statement. This like both you and I have our own experiences with specific factions and yes, subcultures and all that sort of stuff. So I can't speak as like a blanket statement, but within my own experiences, the concept of mental health and questioning things like gender and sexuality and all that sort of stuff, it was frequently partnered with the idea of just pray about it. Just, you're not, just like, God will provide and all that those sort of like words that are just kind of thrown out. There was a conversation that I overheard between two older women, and one was talking about like anxiety and depression and things like that, and how she was just needed to be spending more time in her Bible and with like, in prayer and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting there in the corner thinking, have you tried to seek a professional who's been trained in brain juices? Mm-hmm. Because I do believe that there is some positive stock to be taken in religion, or to be taken in like religious practices, I should say. Yes. as a general thing. It can be very therapeutic. It can be beneficial.
Yes.
The cultures around them are typically like the politics around large organized religion, I think, are the things that make it harmful to a lot of people.
Agreed.
And makes it very challenging because like for me, the concept of to touch back on like the joke I made about like sexual repression. Well, here's the thing. When you grow up in a culture, specifically like for me, from my Baptist church culture, that is so very much pushing towards don't have sex before you're married. Don't even like for guys, in the church, don't even look at a girl with any sort of iota of like horniness in your mind, using different verbiage, of course. Or for, for the girls in the church, don't you dare ever tempt anyone with your body, yada, yada, which is literally impossible, as an aside, because as a femme presenting person, I could have walked around with like a giant cardboard box and someone somewhere would probably have, the horny time with it. It doesn't matter. Human beings are, they're just beings. It's the idea of telling someone so hard, you have to deny literally everything that your body is telling you in order to fulfill this mandate. Yep. Right? Now, if you take that statement and put it in the context of like a serial killer, now that's different. Yes. That's very different. But it's this idea that I had been brought up in this culture from like birth to completely cut myself off from any sort of like sexual gratification in any sort of way, anything, literally anything. there was a period of time from when I was about 14 to like 13 to 18 or so. So like peak puberty years.
Mm-hmm.
I was heavily addicted to pornography, like heavily addicted to it. And it's something that I've come to terms with now. And that's like, to me, it was a heavy detriment to me psychologically at the time.
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect.
Sure.
And it heavily altered like my view of sexuality and everything like that, because I had the two extremes. I had hyper fantasized sexuality, and I had hyper repressed sexuality. There was no like healthy in between. So when I got married, having not had that healthy in between, it was a very strange and scary time for me, because of how I was raised, how I thought I was dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then finding out, that's what? Neither of these are it.
Yeah. It's almost like the two extremes are extremes.
Very interesting thing.
And like, kind of going back to what you were saying with the whole like, this is how you need to behave thing, especially to like younger like kids going through puberty and stuff. Like so much, at least from my experience, like so much of the pressure was put on, in their words, like the girls, to like make sure, one, like you are not presenting yourself in a way that is tempting to the men.
Mm-hmm.
Because like then that is on you for, you know, being a temptress.
How dare you wear a skirt that goes above your ankles?
Like they still hit the guys, like, again, in their verbiage, the guys with that, you know, don't give in to temptation, don't let yourself be tempted. It's like, you realize that like it's not a one-way street, right? Like this is gonna surprise you. But it's not just like the he/him population who can be tempted to you know, engage in sexual acts there, Padre.
It is so, see, now that it's the idea of like describing it like that is, it's taking any sort of like sexual anonymity from women or femme people, of being like, it's reinforcing that idea that like you're just an object.
Yep.
At least in this category.
Yep.
You know? And having them not having anonymity, and like, no, actually I'm very sexy. I'm actually like really hot, and you should appreciate this. You should appreciate this, you know? Appreciate me for myself, but also you're allowed to appreciate my body. Like, that's totally, you know? But then also conversely, like that's taking, like, that's not giving any sort of responsibility to men or masked people, because, you know, don't look at, like, don't you dare have any tempting thoughts. Well, one, that's literally impossible.
Yeah.
Because like I could look at a mug of coffee and be like, you know, okay, now let's go now. You know, it's not necessarily something that's just literally like yes or no.
It was a very fun joke at the Bible camp that we worked at, because it turned out that like the years that I worked there on staff, I think 85% of us wound up being queer. But the big phrase they like to use was like, boys are blue, girls are red, no purple.
Yeah, I heard that a whole lot.
It just
a whole lot.
Okay.
How do you feel about maroon then? Let's go with some a night blue. But that's I went to college at a privately owned Christian conservatory, blah blah blah
Ooh.
blah. Yeah, and it was a lot of the very same culture, you
Mhm.
know. I was in less of a bubble than I was when I was growing up, so like I was introduced to the idea of like queer people for one for the
Same.
first time like in 20 years, so that's
Mhm.
fine. Um but I studied theater at this conservative Christian university, and 90% of my graduating class was came out after graduating. And
Mhm.
like of those, half of them I knew while we were in school
Yep.
that they were queer or gay or questioning or anything like that. But you literally couldn't talk about it or you would get kicked out of school.
Which is so wild that that like can still exist.
Yeah. Yeah. If you got caught drinking, you could get kicked out of school. There was like to the point where like we each year, well, I was there at the very least, we had to sign a pact. I don't know if it was called that or if it was called something else, that said when we were on campus or off campus, even during breaks and summertime, we would still hold to the same standards as when we were on school campus. Right? I can guarantee you no one followed that. 100,
Yeah.
even when they were on campus, can guarantee there was partying and drinking and drug use and sex everywhere, but no one wanted to talk about it. And I think that's the biggest qualm I have about like this my schooling experience, but then just like the culture as it is that it denies that these things are happening in its own space. It's so strange now, now that I've like stepped back from a lot of it, to think back and realize how damaging a lot of the thoughts were.
Hmm. It's a lot of like self-imposed one self-hate and then like dislike of other people because of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it like even back when I would call myself like still devout, I was always questioning the concept that like God gave Satan the earth. So like the earth is like Satan's realm and we just have to like get through it so that we can be with him in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
But we like the suffering that we have here on earth and like the disease oppressive things that people have been dealing with for centuries and centuries and centuries, like you cannot tell me, this is again in my own experience, so this asterisk next to everything I'm about to say, you you cannot tell me that this benevolent, all-knowing, all-loving individual who created everything said, hey, you know what's a good idea? I'm going to put all of these people for generations on this rock in space, make just absolute hell on earth for them. But if they love me enough, then they can be happy afterward. If they don't, they will burn in a lake of fire for all eternity. And like I'm not trying to be like, your sarcastic like flying spaghetti monster, like, take on religion, because yeah, I get it. Like there is a compulsion to believe in something bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why there are so many religions throughout like the world and throughout history. Like there is a belief that there is something beyond this space that we take up here on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are trying to convince me that the one who is running it, who has got all these different writings on their divinely influenced word, like that they have passed down to their, apostles and disciples to put down so that we may better understand and may better live our lives to the expectation of that being. Why do kids get cancer? Why is there a disease that is rampantly killing people for going on 2 years now? Why is it that a family who is from the Middle East moves into a neighborhood and there's a shitty white Christian whispering and uproar about it? Like, what world did you make that we have to live in and still tell us that you love us? Because I reject that. Like, I do not believe that is true. And frankly, I think your church just exists as a money machine, because since one of your main missions has always been end world hunger, and the churches of the world rake in billions every year, I think you could have done it by now if you wanted to, but you haven't.
There was growing up, there was in my head, kind of two different kind of churches. There was the based on like the Great Commission. If you're unfamiliar with what the Great Commission is, it was essentially, and again, saying this is going to be very interesting if you have not been raised in a Bible believing background. But there is a passage in the New Testament when Jesus, the Son of God, is about to has just come back from the dead, is about to ascend back into heaven, and he has his closest followers and disciples with him, and he basically gives them the general creed to go and spread the good news to essentially everyone that they could meet. Starting in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. That's essentially being like small circle right here where you're at, large, go out a little farther, and then to the, just like tell people about this stuff. And growing up, there was in my head two kinds of churches. There was the go and tell kind of churches, or church bodies, I should say, groups of people. There was the go and tell, and those are the individuals who would be active in their communities, who would be, actively helping everyone, not, just like the church camp down the street or something like that. They would be in their communities. I think of a lot of like inner city churches who are helping like the impoverished people, who are like hands-on doing things, like literally living the truth that like Jesus did, dining with thieves and harlots, quote unquote, that sort of stuff, right? And then there's the come in here kind of churches, and that's a lot of the churches that I grew up in, which was they have a lot of good things to say if you make your way here.
Yep.
If you become part of our circle, which is not, people aren't going to know people aren't going to be able to know the good things that you're saying. And I do think that there's a lot of good morals that can be taken from things like Christianity and Catholicism, like super core stuff. Oh, yeah. I think you can pull a lot of really good things. And I think it's because it's universal truths that are found in like kind of every religion, which is like treat other people as you want to be treated kind of thing,
Don't murder.
Just don't do a murder.
Don't do it. I know they stole your cat, but don't murder.
But also just maybe not murder that way. But people aren't going to be able to hear this good news, this good message, if your space that you're telling them to come and hear about it is not a place they want to be in. So like one of the churches that I grew up in was a very wealthy church. It was in a very wealthy community and had a lot of older people who would very gladly give money to the church to do different projects or whatever, but wouldn't spend the time or the energy to make those things a reality. And we're content to just have church be the way that it always has been, which if your church is not, you can still hold on to your core beliefs as a church body, etc., and still evolve with the times. Like it took that church, that specific church, almost the entire, like, was it like 6 years? I was in that church space for about 10 to 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
It took about 6 years or so before they got a contemporary Christian church service, which had more electric guitar and more casual clothing choices and less traditional. I have a lot of biasness against the politics of specifically like the Baptist church culture, because I grew up with my parents being heavily involved in the structure of the church. Like my dad was a pastor to children for a very, very long time, and did an amazing job at what he was doing. Like he taught very well and very very eloquently to children, but also in a way that like they could think about these things, not just, you know, these are what you need to do, you know. Letting them ask questions and giving answers and things of that nature. But because I grew up in that like behind the scenes circle, you see a lot of shitty stuff. Like a lot of people, you know, peeling back the veneer of Christianity. People are just people. And sometimes they hide behind people hide behind religion all the time to like mask how not great of people they are. You know, it's really easy to act really good when you're around people who are acting that same way.
Yep.
But like when you're taken out of that space, you know, it became really easy for me to see facades. And then I couldn't stop seeing facades, especially when I was like in the church space, to the point where now going to a church is very, very challenging, because all like the entire time, if I'm there, I'm like, but do you actually believe what you're saying? But also, why are you choosing to do worship this way? Is this the same formula that you've used for the past 12 years? Why hasn't it changed? You know, has the pastor told this sermon every 4 weeks since the beginning of their pastoralship? It's made it to the point where like church means nothing to me.
Yep.
And it's kind of like part of me is a little bit sad about it, because it was such a big part of my life that like is just gone. It is gone because it was spoiled, you know. In a perfect timeline, there it is.
There we go.
Where I was put in a community space that was actually actively, you know, good for the community, or like a Christian space that was good, that was doing good work for the community, that was actually like living up to the things that it said that it wanted to do, how different things would be.
Yeah.
And I think just in general, like if these organized places of religion really actually lived up to what they were saying that they wanted to do and be, given that, you know, humans are fallible creatures and we all, you know, kind of suck a lot, how different, you know, things would be. One, I don't think we would have had a giant crusade across most of like,
oh my god,
Europe.
That
but
is one of the like I don't know a lot about like history, but I was so like taught to be obsessed with Christianity that like as where most kids were like super into like, Greek mythology or something, I was obsessed with the Crusades. And I realized like how big of an asshole that makes me as like from as a kid. And like I've moved on, I promise, but holy shit, I was just like idolizing these like absolute monsters coming from Europe and just literally being colonizing religious monsters in this place that was existing, allowing people of their faith to exist peacefully, like between like the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians. They were all pretty chill, and then suddenly said, Jesus is white now. We want Jerusalem.
Jesus is white now. Jerusalem is ours.
God, when we just got back from our vacation, there was one spot like between where we were staying and the entrances to the park. That was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a literal like little lot that someone had purchased and put up 10 billboards with the 10 commandments on it. And there were 3 giant crosses, then in the middle with a giant barbed wire crown of thorns on it, and then a bunch of like smaller billboards like plastered all over the place that had like American flags and Ronald Reagan and stuff on them. And I was just like, I'm in hell. I need to get pictures in this place. This is this like the bouillon cube of why I hate religion.
It
It was rough.
I was like, okay, billboards, okay. It's when like it's when the concept of Christianity is plastered solely on America. Like
Yep.
like the concept of Christianity, I mean, maybe like in, one of the denominations of Christianity might have started in America.
Yeah.
Sure. But like Jesus was never here. Like physically.
That dude never set foot here.
What? What you doing?
They didn't even know this place existed back then.
Well, I'm sure Jesus as the Son of God probably knew that it existed.
That's true. I mean, he just didn't want to tell us about it yet.
There were other people doing great things over there. Maybe he didn't want us to ruin it. Maybe that's what it is.
Tried to keep it a secret as long as possible until some asshole got lost. I guess the question I do have for you is like theater stuff with your like schooling and degree and things. Like, did you do things in the field for a while and then sort of move into streaming spaces, or was it a got degree, just got a job to get a job type situation?
It was definitely more of the latter.
That's fair.
I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I had dreams of being everything from a missionary to a parent of 12 children to a veterinarian, all sorts of things. And theater was something that was always kind of like I enjoyed the idea of like performing. And my parents instilled in us like a fairly decent love of theater. They started like a group. I was homeschooled all like kindergarten through 12th grade.
I was also homeschooled for a big stint. I didn't know this about you.
Yes. I was homeschooled all the way until college, which definitely had its own things.
Social skills, what are those?
But my parents started a homeschool drama group so that we would have theater.
Yeah.
And that really got me into the mindset of like, maybe that's something fun, so let's study that, not really thinking of it as like a long-term career or anything like that. And then as I got into it, I specifically studied theater design, so like set design and costume and lighting and directing, stage management, all of that sort of stuff was like the focus of my my degree.
That explains why you're good at layouts and overlays.
Thank you. But there was a little bit of like performance added into that, and if I had the money and the time, I probably would have done both.
Yeah.
Sadly, it was not a very good it was not an art school, so the like theater was not super highly valued. So like it was a little bit unfortunate for those who decided to go the performance route, because it wasn't like super well flushed out. There were some great instructors there at the time, but it has unfortunately become something a little less than it was before, and that's really sad for me. But from a design standpoint, had some very, very good teachers. Some of like I sadly don't keep in contact with them, but during my time when I was there, they were some of the most like impactful people to my like upbringing.
Good.
Who like taught me things beyond, the scope of theater, like how the real world works, things like that. And so those instructors instilled in me a desire to learn and to be better at what I was doing, but also kind of awoke in me a different kind of passion for theater, because like a lot of theater for me up until that point was like the pageantry, the like actual like the acting, and it was all about the actors and everything like that. And then after that, actors, phenomenal. Like you can't have a show without actors. However, you literally cannot have a show without the production that goes behind. You can. It's just going to be in the middle of either a dark stage, you'll be naked, or it's in the middle of like a public domain space,
Yep.
You can have a play without production staff, but you cannot have theater without production staff.
That makes sense.
And learning about different things, like lighting, and how different effects can evoke different emotions, and how you design a set can extract different feelings from people. Like we did a production of The Crucible, which, keep in mind, this was a conservative Christian university.
I was gonna say
that was one of the most I don't know if it was in the same year, but it might have been back to back. We did the musical Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, which was an interesting choice, and I am glad they did it, but it was also like an interesting choice.
Yeah.
But The Crucible is one of those ones I will always remember for two reasons. One, it really pushed the boundaries. I don't know if it ended up being in a positive way for the theater department, because it was like one of my last years there. But it was the first time on a main stage production that there was cursing ever, period.
Wow.
But also the set design was so incredibly evocative, because it was a naked stage. There was no, if you're familiar with theater terminology, a lot of times with the stereotypical theater stage is called a proscenium. It's got like a picture frame around it, and a lot of the set goes behind it. So most theaters that you go to are going to be that way. Behind a lot of like the scenery and everything, there's usually like a light fixture called a cyc, CYC, that like gives, it makes it look like it's daytime or nighttime or whatever kind of like sort of lighting effects that you want, or there's like a backdrop or something that's behind it. This stage was one multi-tiered, so it had different levels. It had 5 different levels, so
Oh, wow.
all of them were on different heights, including a sloped middle section that sloped all the way down and went into the seating.
Oh,
So
wow.
like, and it was very cool. But on top of that, there was no backdrop. There was no psych. It was just the black painted wall of the theater. That was it. And the cast would bring on set pieces that they would need into these very small platforms, not very small, but these like sectioned off platforms.
Yeah.
And would have their scene, and it would be like in a house or during like one of the trial proceedings or anything like that. And it would just be the actors with like a handful of set pieces, maybe a table and some chairs, or like the props that they bring on stage or things like that. Or, if there was like a big set change, we would do it like during intermission or something like that, where like, us theater people, the backstage ninjas would come on stage for a brief period of time. But that performance was so striking to me. And I think that's kind of what really made me, because I was the assistant stage manager for that show. That's what really drove for me the idea that like this could be done as like it could be done as a career if I really wanted to do that as a career. And after I graduated, I got a job that was just, we had no money. I was newly married and we didn't have a place to really live. And we needed money. And so it was just like, man, let's just get money. But also the arts and theater in particular is very hard to get into if you haven't had experience outside of like collegiate experience. And so there was a handful of places that I tried to apply to after I got out of school. And I've only ever had one professional theatrical position, and it was as a spotlight operator for one show 3 years ago. I think 2018-ish, I think is when it was, something like that. Or 2019. I don't remember. Time is a weird time.
I don't know what year it is.
But it was very interesting to see, because at that point, I had been out of school for about 6 years. Like out of college, I had graduated college for like 6 years post that, and hadn't really done any sort of theatrical anything apart from streaming. Because between graduating and doing that one job, I'd done a bunch of streaming stuff, like TTRPG stuff. I didn't know streaming was really an option until like I had a friend who I met at college, and they said, "Hey, you want to play D&D with me online for like with a big group, and it's going to be, like people are going to be able to see it and everything." And I said, "Oh, okay, why not?" And then lo and behold, here I am trying to make a mild career out of it. We'll see see where it goes. But it would be, during my time as a spot op, there was a lot of questioning whether or not I wanted to do it as like a full-time job, because of the kind of life that I had made, like the kind of schedule I had made for myself, the kind of friends that I had made, and the things that like I had started doing was kind of antithetical to a theater life. Because with theater, you kind of have to be, at least for like 3 weeks of like the show runtime, it's just theater. It's just the people you're with, and it's just doing that, which can be fine. And it was fun. It is good. I enjoy it. I just have to find the right kind of balance if I wanted to try to like really, really, really pursue it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I don't want to get to the point of like not ever seeing my friends or the people I care about ever again. Because
Yeah.
it
That's
almost got to that point. I'm like, I don't like this abort. Leave, let's leave, gotta go. Time to go now.
yeah. That seems to be like such a consistent like diverging path for so many people who are in like fields that are like theater or music or like uh even like chefs. Like
Mm-hmm.
you you have to make that your life because that's the only way to make it in that industry.
Yeah.
It's like it's not like a 9 to 5. It's
Yeah.
like you have to be so not even dedicated, like obsessed with your field and like
Yeah.
being there to like put in the face time, to put in the work, to like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, make sure that you're being seen by the right people.
Yep. Yeah.
And it is just like good on people who can do that. Like and
Yeah,
that want
absolutely.
that because that is something that is so impressive that
Mm-hmm.
like you were able to like set aside the rest of life to go for that thing that you want.
Yeah.
But
It's
at the same time, the
it's
rest of
hard.
life is also very important.
It is. I think that a lot of it is so I think that I mean, we could play what ifs for the end of eternity till the end of eternity.
Oh yeah.
But um a lot of what I think would make it work is, people coming in fresh out of school or like with internships and then get connected into, a theater community or a theater company or whatever. Because at that point you start to build the relationships in that sphere. And so you have a
Mhm.
lot of, you basically have theater friends, or you have
Yeah.
like theater and techie friends, or you have like theater and music friends, in that circle. So you're all doing the same things at the same time. Um, and in that way, your social needs are met, all of that, your work needs are met and all those sorts of things. And it can be sustainable at that point.
Yeah.
And it's tricky, or at least it was tricky for me when I was in it, because I had built a network of support and friends and everything in a vastly different sphere,
Hmm.
to the point where like a lot of people couldn't relate to what, were supportive but couldn't really relate to like what I was doing, because you could be working anywhere from like 4 hours to 14 hours and you don't really know until you're there,
Yep.
how long it's really going to be. So you can't really make super hard commitments, unless you like, like, oh, this is a show day. As soon as you get to show days, then you can do whatever, it's going to be this to this, and then that's it.
Yep.
Usually. Usually. Sometimes not, but it's something that I definitely have tried to get back into. There's a lot of places, there's a lot of theaters that are close by here in the Cincinnati area, that I've been trying to get my foot back into. A lot of places aren't really hiring, or aren't hiring for someone who doesn't have experience.
Yeah.
And that's the rub, because you need the money, but you got to get the work to get the money, but you can't get the work because you need money.
That whole healthy cycle of work experience.
Yeah. But no, I was told that just get a degree and you'll be able to get any job you want.
Yep.
Okay.
If you say so.
If you say so. Oh well. But
And
yeah,
in the
that
meantime, like a lot of the like spaces and stuff, like when I've been able to like lurk in on some of the D&D streams and stuff that you've been on, like it looks like it's sort of giving you like at least something to exercise
oh
those
yeah.
skills and like
Oh yeah.
that's like so I was like I said, also homeschooled up until halfway through my freshman year. So they even took away the freshman year like initial, oh, what are we doing? We're all in high school. It was like the cliques had been formed, and then I was sort of shoved in there. The only theater experience I had was my senior year. I had that one's Bender. They put together this play, and one of my friends who was like in theater like forced me to come try out for this part because they said you are perfect for it, like because you do voices and impressions and stuff like that, like you absolutely must do this character's audition. Because the I don't remember the name of the play, but it was this play that was set in sort of like a faux Transylvania, like it was a comedy Transylvania setting, and I was basically playing all of the like inbred townsfolk.
No.
So I was like the chauffeur was, you know, Von something. They all had the same last name, but it was just one person playing every like townsperson they met in different costumes. And there was like my highlight in the show is that the town is on fire, like because you know Frankenstein's monster has escaped. And so it is a scene in the town square where I am playing all 8 or 9 characters at once, running across the stage, changing off stage, having conversations with myself, running back across stage in a different costume for like a solid like 8 to 9 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just the most ridiculous thing that I've ever done in my life. And then we eventually had to cancel it because our theater director quit. So we didn't actually get to do the play.
Well,
so my theater experience is practiced.
But yeah, like you just mentioned, specifically TTRPGs, but even more specifically, like the streaming aspect of it has really given me an outlet that I wasn't expecting, which was an inspiration for this tattoo right there. That's a D20 right there. But when I started, specifically when I started running TTRPGs, starting with D&D 5e and then moving on to like 1,000 other things. But running TTRPGs gave me the storytelling aspect of like improv and things of that nature. It gave me the set design aspects of building a space for people to navigate around. I could play with sound design and with character work and all of those different things. And now doing like online like streaming stuff, I can as characters now, as like being able to play in games where I can work on costuming now if I wanted to, and characterization, because like I just have like this little noodle body. So like, what am I going to do with it? And how is it different than, you know, me when I normally flail about? It's been exceptionally freeing to be able to be in these spaces, because like I still get more rejections for being parts of something as I do job rejections, like theater job rejections. Like it still exists and it still sucks and I still feel really bad about it. But all the opportunities that I get to be involved in, that I get to run shows, or I get to be in long-term shows or one-shots or things of that nature, whether on stream or off stream or anything like that, has really, at least at this point, at this stage, satisfied that need for creative output.
Yeah.
And like I do hope that someday I'll be able to get back into theater, maybe from like a managerial side, because I love stage management. I love specifically assistant stage management, like the one step down from like calling all of the shots to making sure all those called shots happen. that is where I excel is right there in that little spot when I know what needs to happen and who needs to make it happen. Let's go.
Yes.
Let's go. So that's my theater journey. It's ongoing.
I love it.
Ongoing times.
I really loved, like, I'm just now like barely dipping my toes into like playing D&D in online spaces with people who like are not my like home group, because it genuinely like makes me nervous to do so, because there is like a part of you that has to be really vulnerable.
Oh, 100%. The one thing that helped me was crying in character in a stream.
Okay.
It helped it in that for literally just for me. It meant that I had finally broken past that like need to care, if that makes sense. Still caring deeply about like, you know, portraying a character in a true to nature.
Yep.
But not being afraid to, not holding anything back at that point, you know? And I literally like, it took almost an entire year of doing it on like a virtual space for me to even consider having a very emotionally raw character, you know?
Yeah.
Because you can portray, I portrayed a terrible character, like an actually factually very morally bad character, and didn't really like it was a performance, you know? And then shortly after, I played a character who was basically me going through very traumatic experiences consensually and grieving as myself and also as my character in a very healthy way. That it was so cathartic. That sort of thing is like something that I mentioned it on a past nightcap with people, but like that sort of experience is something that I wish to give to everyone. Like I wish everyone could have at least one of those moments where you, whether it's in person, online but off streamed, or streamed, you get to have a moment either as a person running the game or as a person experiencing and playing a game where the connection is so real. Not that you like are your character, you know, there's still that separation there, but that you feel so in that space that you can be free to actually do anything and know that you're safe and know that you're being taken care of, and can have those really like real raw moments. So scary to think about, so scary to like dip your toes into, especially with people you've never played before. But I cannot, I wish I could, I want to be the person to give that to people. Like
it's so satisfying. Like our home group played this campaign for 3 years, like weekly game, 3 years long, finished it at the beginning of the last summer. And like I listened back to like day one where like we all were like pretty comfortable with each other, and then getting back to the point at the tail end where it was like they had like actually built their character's relationship through 3 years of like trials and like, you know, actually like dating like in game and stuff. And like when it came time for that game to end, like there was some bittersweet stuff that happened at the end of it. And like when it came time for their characters to like part ways, like there were genuine like moments of tears at the table, because they related that moment to something. And we had one of the players who was in that situation was like beginning of the campaign looked me in the eye and said, "I heard you like to make people cry at the table," in like emo ways. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, They're not going to get me. And I made like monetary bets with a couple of my players that if I ever got him to cry, they would have to pay me. And they were all like, I'll take that bet. He's never going to cry. And I got him.
I think I had that. I've had one campaign wrap up. And it was kind of wrapped up in like a, you know, and then they, you know, ride off into the sunset kind of thing. But it was a campaign that I think went on for almost 2 years off and on. And there was like some breaks in between because life happens.
Yeah.
But it was fully online. It was from people from 3 different time zones, one of which was 13 hours ahead of us. And it was a learning experience for me as a GM, but it was also like being able to wrap something up that had been going for that long in a way that was satisfying, but also like left room for like, you know, if we wanted to pick these characters up later in the future, we could, or if we wanted to, you know, play around with like, you know, one shots or whatever with these characters, we definitely can.
Yep.
But being able to say the end, those words, that sentiment in a storytelling capacity, when you've spent the time and the effort and the emotional output to craft something as a person running the game, to craft something that everyone is so invested in, and to give them a gift of an ending. Oh, it's so satisfying.
Like I will never forget like the closing moments of that game where like my usual like sign off for like a D&D session is like, and that is where we'll end tonight's session. And I got to like go down the line and be like, thank you for playing this game. Thank you all for being my friends. I love you very much. And that is where we'll end the campaign. And I would
cry.
Crying so much. And like we had a little bit of chatter after that, and people were like signing off and like going to bed because it was like a late session. And
as like, all last sessions should be.
I was just in the Discord like chat room like by myself, like sort of like the guy going around like, you know, shutting off all the lights, flipping the stools over. And one of my players like screenshotted that I was still in the chat room and he said, "It's okay, you can close up now." And I was just like,
it's like the Doctor Who, like, I don't want to go.
It very much was, because we're like, we have a new campaign that started recording now, and it's been so fun. But like I literally had like a 3-month, like I took the summer off of DMing because I would hear music that I would use during the writing process of that campaign, and like I would start crying. Like it was grief, but in a good way. But it was like
that nostalgic kind of, that music does that to me like so often, especially since playing so many different games and characters and things of that nature. And I make playlists now for most of my characters, so like it's even worse now. It's even more music, and it's just so good. It's so wonderful. Good. I think that's a great place to wrap up if you're good with wrapping up.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Cedar, for hanging out with me today.
Thank you for having me.
This was so I've loved this whole process of doing this show because it gets me to talk to people that I've always wanted to talk to on a more personable level. And we just get to. And then it's forging friendships and alliances, and hopefully not any enemies along the way.
I think you would be hard pressed to forge an enemy in this format.
So I am super excited for everything that you've got going on. Please tell the people where they can find you, what you're up to, if anything. And anything you want to promote.
So you can find me if you just head over to my Twitter, just at TheCedarForge. there's a link tree up there. It's got links to my Etsy shop. It's got links to my Threadless shop where I do some t-shirt designs and whatnot. Woodworks are found on the Etsy. The OnlyFans are on there for the other woodworks. Wink. And all the other like sort of side projects I have going on there. But yeah, thank you for having me on. I've had a lovely time.
I've absolutely also had a lovely time. For everyone who is here hanging out, thank you so much. Support sex work. 1, 2, make sure you love yourself because that's important. And 3, I hope you all enjoy your evening and have a wonderful day, night, time, whatever time it happens to be for you, and have a wonderful nightcap. Goodbye. Goodbye.